Hello everyone and welcome to this video. My name is Amir Hakmi. I am a solutions architect with AWS, and in today's video we're going to talk about a new announcement that was made last week about introducing Strands Agents, which is an open source AI agents SDK provided by AWS. And what I'm showing here on my screen is a blog post that was published on May 16, and it really kind of provide the in-depth details about the Strands agents and the story behind it. What is the story behind the Strands agents, and how actually a variety of different teams within AWS, within Amazon, how they use this Strands agents to actually build their own agents within their own services. And for example, the author is talking about the journey for the Q developer team on how they actually started experimenting building the agents and how this SDK helped a lot. So I'm really excited that this has became an open source so other builders can actually benefit from it and can use it to build their own agents with the flexibility needed. Not really going to dive into the blog post. I will share the link, so you feel free to read the blog at your own pace. And the intent of this video is to show you how we're going to build an agent live demo using the QCLI. And we're just pretty much trying to do zero code, almost low code, no code. That's the term that we use a lot. And we're going to show how the agent can be used within, let's say, a simple application where the agent will handle the user input and kind of take action on behalf of the user to fulfill a specific intent that it's coming from the user. So pretty much in a nutshell, for those who don't know what an agent is pretty much just an agent that can take a user input as a prompt, and the agent has access to a model, let's say a large language model, that can interact with it to kind of generate responses, resonate, like apply reasoning, and also make a determination on what set of tools that it has access to it can kind of interact with. So again, the agent has access to the model and the tools as well at the same time. And eventually all this goes into a loop where toward the end, the agent will be able to fulfill or answer the end user question and provide back a concise answer as a kind of final response to the end user. So the just real quick, there's a very nice documentation. It's strandsagents.com. Pretty much provide all the details that you really want to have to build agents using this SDK. So feel free to check it out. And again, my intent is not to dive deep into these, but what really got my attention is in the GitHub repo for the MCP server for Strands agents, they actually built an MCP server that you can actually configure your generative AI assistant to actually interact with this MCP server to get all the documentation that it needs to know how to build a Strands agents. And this is exactly what I'm going to do in my video. Pretty much I will configure the QCLI or Q developer CLI with the MCP server for Strands agents. So when I task the CLI to build an agent, it will have access to all the details that it needs to actually go ahead and build the agents on my behalf. So just to real quick here, that in my case again I'm using Q Developer CLI, but if you're using something else like Klein or Cursor, probably you can do the same as well. So if I just go to my CLI and I just go ahead and do Q chat, I will log into my CLI session. You will notice here, let me just make this a little bit bigger so you can actually read it. You will notice here that I actually have 4 MCP servers initialized within my QCLI. I have the core MCP server, which is more of like an MCP server that can help understanding the prompt or the intent that it's coming from me as a user. I have an MCP server to search AWS documentation. I have another one to create diagrams, but I also have this Strands MCP server that I just showed here So I pretty much have it configured by just going to mcp.json. You will add this kind of description, and the CLI will understand that it has access to an MCP server that can actually help to get the documentation about building an agent using the Strands SDK. So the what I'm going to build is pretty much something that I've kind of started with as a thread, where I always wanted to have like a stock market analyzer to help me with, like, financial advices and stuff like that. So in my prior video, I showed how you can use the CLI to build an MCP that can actually interact with the with Yahoo Finance to query stock market information. And I was like, when I saw this SDK coming out, I was like, can I upgrade and move from an MCP to have a full agent that can actually do more than what an MCP can do? Because again, think of the MCP as just a tool. An agent is, as I showed you earlier, is pretty much something that can go in a loop where it has access to a model, it has access to the tools, and can actually have more deterministic, not deterministic, but actually more. It can resonate, it can reason more and provide more concise information to the end user instead of just using a tool on its own. So this is pretty much what I'm going to build, an agent that can actually interact with Yahoo Finance. So, and to do that, this is what I put together as a prompt, and this is what I'm going to share with the CLI. And what I'm showing here is that the prompt itself, I'm saying I want to create a beginner-friendly stock market assistant using the Strands Agent SDK, and I'm saying to the CLI, please help me build this stock market buddy, which is a conversational agent that explains stocks in plain English. And I'm providing steps and details as of like more to the CLI to know exactly what I'm trying to do. So I'm telling, like, number one here, I'm telling that you go ahead and use the Strands Agent SDK with a specific model. In this case, I'm using Claude 3.7. I'm providing more kind of house cleaning, create a clean minimal project structure in this location, set up a Python virtual environment. But then here, number four, I'm providing more details to what the agent will be actually doing. Core features of the agent is to get the current stock prices, explain market movement with everyday analogies, provide beginner-friendly insights, use emojis and visual indicators if needed. And you can expand on this list, but for the purpose of the demo, I'm just gonna stay here. And again, number five, I'm telling the CLI to actually create an interface that I can use with the agent. So again, you need to have an interface, and imagine this interface is your application, whether that's a web app or something else. In my case, it's just like a simple interface where it can interact with the agent that it's going to build in number four. So I can interact with it and, task it with things like what's going on with Amazon stock today, stuff like that. So why don't we just go ahead and copy this and go to the CLI terminal that we have and just paste it in here and let the CLI actually do what it's best at. So again, the intent here is to use the CLI to build the entirety of the agent using Strands Agents SDK. The first thing here, it's asking me for permissions to use the core MCP server that I have, which is to kind of break down the prompts and have a better understanding to it. So I'm just gonna say, go ahead, yes, let's do that. And then from here, it actually trying to reach out to the other MCP server that it has access to, which is Strands MCP, which is the one that I just showed you right here. So I will just let it go ahead. And what it's trying to do here is to kind of get more details about the Strands SDK itself, to kind of be able to build it on its own. So it needs more details. So I could either share that details with the CLI myself, or I can just use the MCP server to actually let it go and search whatever it needs and come back with a good understanding to what it needs to build. Same thing, just it's trying to collect more details. So let's give it permissions. Here we go. Now it's ready to a point where it can actually go ahead and start building the structure. So you can see here that it's trying to do that. So I'll just go ahead and say yes. And while it's doing this, let me just grab the folder that we have. Let me just open my Visual Studio. And here's the folder that it actually it's gonna use. And that's the requirement.txt that it just created. So right now it's trying to build the readme.md. So I'm just gonna give it permissions to do that. And you can see how the readme here popped up. And from there, it's going to it's trying to build all the dependencies and the environments that it's needed. So I'm just going to give it permissions and say yes. And since it's using Python, it's kind of trying to build the structure of the project appropriately, again using best practices and how to have all these init.py files. Again, you don't have to kind of worry about all those details. You can just let it kind of do what it's trying to do. I'm just going to say yes. Now, again, since I'm just demoing and I don't have to pay attention to a lot of the details on what it's trying to build. But again, if you're building something more for like production ready, my advice to you is to really kind of make sure you validate everything that is being generated. But in this case, I've been using the CLI for a good amount of time, and I kind of understand what it does for the most cases. So I would assume that it knows exactly what I'm trying to do. Again, things will be as good as much details you provide in the prompt itself. In my case, I'm just gonna let the SDK, the CLI, to actually take the kind of the lead. But eventually, you need to reach a point where you can actually validate everything that it's trying to create. Now, I have to say the CLI has become a bit slower over the past few days. When I first using it, it was much faster. And maybe that's a good sign because it means that a lot of people are actually using it. Sometimes when it goes into this thinking mode, it means that it's trying to generate something, I would say large enough, maybe a few hundred lines of codes, maybe more. But we'll kind of be patient here until it's complete and ready. But eventually, I think what it's trying to do is here we go. It's trying to put together, so it wrote about 288 line of codes, and specifically what it built here, if you scroll up, it built the stock tools. So again, if you remember when we talked, and let me just say, go ahead, yes. When we talked about the agents, because again, my prompt is saying build an agent, so the agent has to have tools. So the tools will be driven by the prompt that I shared with it, right? So, and if you look at the different core features, you can think of each feature as a tool on its own. So what the CLI actually did in this case, it created a set of tools for each one of these core features. And then eventually, when it's trying to build the agent, it will tell the agent that you have access to all these tools that you can use. So let's go back and validate. And before I say yes to this, I'm just going to show you if I go to tools, and here we go. You can see that these are the different set of tools that it actually created right here. So you have the get stock info as a tool. It has the explain market movement. Again, I'm not going to kind of review all the code at this point, but eventually we have to. Again, just for the purpose of the demo. And then you have another tool like to extract the stock symbol. So what it did, then the next step, it actually created the agent itself as agent.py. So let me just go ahead and give it permission to write it to my folder. And if you look at the agent.py, you can see here it kind of created the agent and it gave it a prompt. And you're saying you're a StockBuddy, a friendly AI assistant that explains stock market, and your goal is to make financial information accessible to beginners. And it kind of went through and provided a full system prompt for it. But if you scroll down a little bit here, you notice that it's actually providing the set of tools that it created initially under stock.tools. And these are, get stock price, get stock info, explain market movement, stuff like that. If you want to add more tools, eventually you just need to add them to the stock tools.py or have it in a specific structure and then just add it here to the agent. And again, all this is driven by the Strands SDK itself to make it really easy for you to build these agents. What it did here is to create the actual app. So again, remember, if we go back here, you have an agent that will interact with the model of the tools, but this agent has to be visible or to be accessible by an application. Since I don't have an app, if you go back to my prompt, I asked the CLI to actually create an interface for me, and that's what it did in this case. So if I just go back here and I say, go ahead and yes, write this down to my folder structure. Pretty much that's the application itself. And that's it. Again, my intent is not to review the code in this case. What it's trying to do here, it's also to make the app.py executable, so it can actually run as Python code. So I'm just going to give it permissions to do that. And then we'll wait for a few seconds. Eventually, it will get there. And okay, so it actually did something even more interesting, and it's a setup.py. Because my intent is to, again, it's as good as your prompt, but it kind of, the CLI assumed that I really don't want to do anything. I just wanted the CLI to pretty much take care of everything. It even created a setup.py file for me, which if I run, it will take care of like installing all the dependencies. If there is anything that I need to do, it will just take care of it, and it put it kind of as a script all together. So I'm just going to give it permissions and say, go ahead and create the setup.py. Here, I mean, you can intervene and you can say, no, please don't create a setup.py. I want to do it myself. Or if you have more integrations with a CI/CD where you have your own way of running things, you can just let the CLI know that. But in my case, I'm just let it do it, and because why not? Here it's creating another file. It's called run.sh, which is a way to kind of pretty much run this application, and it's trying to make it executable. So I'm just gonna say yes, go ahead. And here we go. So at this point, it took maybe like 5 minutes or so. It's confirming that it created the beginner-friendly stock market assistant called the StockBuddy. It kind of provided the project structure that I put together. What are the key features? It's confirming that it's used the Strands Agent SDK. And notice here that I didn't have to provide any details about the Strands Agent SDK, and we used the Strands SDK MCP server to actually let the CLI get all the details that it needs. It's just providing more details on how to use it. So why don't we just go ahead and do that? And here it's like how to run the StockBuddy. That it's asking me to navigate to this location. But one thing I'm gonna check is the .env. It's specifying a specific AWS CLI profile to default. I'm gonna change it to a specific profile that I have set up on my local machine. In your case, if you have a specific profile, you just need to modify that. Again, it depends on how it's setting that up. And the reason it actually used the profile, because in my prompt, I specifically asked the QCLI to set up the agent to use the BedrockModel API and ensure you use an AWS CLI profile for authentication. And why I'm doing this? Because this is how I typically interact with my AWS account. And because we're going to use Claude 3.7 Sonnet on Bedrock, I need to have access to my AWS account. And in my case, I'm just using a CLI profile. If you have other preference on how to do it, please feel free to do that. But again, just to kind of explain how things are happening and why specifically it kind of created this AWS profile like here. So let me just open a terminal here. And I'm just going to follow the steps and say, go ahead and navigate. I mean, we're already in this location. I'm just going to say, go ahead and run this. And in this case, it's running the virtual environment for the Python. It's installing all the dependencies. And again, the idea here is that it kind of did all that on my behalf as the CLI, if you remember. And we're just going to follow the steps that it's providing to make sure that we can actually access the application and the agent that it created. And once this script is complete, we can go ahead. I mean, here it's providing you the alternative. You can set up manually if you want to, but in my case, I'm just going to use the run.sh, and let's see if that will work. Here we go. So it actually provided me with the interface, and it's saying welcome to StockBuddy. That's the kind of interface that I created. And here it's asking me to start interacting with it. So let's try it. Let's copy this and say what's happening with Apple stock today. Okay, and in this case, it says error processing. I'm getting an access denied exception. It looks like there's something wrong with the model ID. So let's check that. If I go back to the agent.py, okay, I see what's going on. So it actually have the correct ID, I would assume, but then the region is not correct. I would like to actually use US East 1. Let me save that. And let me just kill this and let me run the sh again. All right, so let's try it again. So again, my question is what's happening with Apple stock today? Here we go. So it is working. This is pretty much amazing because what is happening here behind the scene is I'm asking a question and I'm saying, I'm just providing the name of the stock or the company, which is Apple in this case. And in this case, it is going to, the interface is going to pass the information over to the agent. And the agent has access to the model, which is Claude 3.7. And the model is actually telling that, for you to get the stock market details, you need to access the set of tools that we have access to. So if you remember, stock.tools or _tools, these are the lists of tools that it has access to. So the agent on its own is determining that in order for me to get the stock market, I need to use tool 1, 2, 3. So they're actually doing that, and it's providing the tool is technically querying the Yahoo Finance to get all the details back. And you can ask more details about it. Like here it's asking me it's kind of prompting me with something. Like, would you like to understand why Apple stock might be moving this way today, or get more details about information about the company? If I say, yeah, let's get more details about the company itself. And in this case, it's triggering another tool. It's called the Get Stock Info. And it's pretty much providing what Apple is actually all about. And, you're kind of getting all the details that you're looking for real time from the agent itself. And maybe let's try something else. Maybe let's get let me know about the recent stock performance and why it might be moving this way, the way it is. All right, so let's do that. And in this case, the agent will determine which tool to use, right? In this case, it's trying to use the explain market movement tool that I created. Again, like how good the tool is in our case, we just use the CLI to create the tool itself. If you have a specific intent for the tool to do something very specific in your use case, you can use the CLI to actually make that happen. Or if you have the code, or if you have the tool as a built-in tool, maybe it's just an API call that you would like to make, you can just configure it and just let it go. And in this case, the agent came back with the details that it needs, and it's providing all the details that we see here at this picture, or this in my screen here. So that's it, folks. Really what I wanted to show. It's really exciting. We were able to build an entire agent using the Agent Strands SDK. And we did almost no code whatsoever using the QCLI. And all these integrations that we're talking about, like the fact that we have an MCP server, that we can just point our virtual or generative AI assistants to know like all the details about the agents and just let it kind of build things on our behalf. It's just really, really amazing. It is definitely an exciting time, a bit scary, to be honest with you. But my recommendation is to stay on top of this on a daily basis almost. And this is what I've been doing so far. So please, make sure you stay on top of all this as much as you can. Thank you again for watching this video. I'll try to keep doing these as much as I can, and we'll take it from there. Thank you so much, and have a great day. Take care.